Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very accomplished and recognized social entrepreneur, a fellow YPO member from Dubai, Sunil Lalvani. Sunil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Pleasure to be on.
Thank you. Sunil is the founder and CEO of Project Maji. And we'll talk much more about Project Maji, which won the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Global Water Award. He was a serial entrepreneur and he's moved to becoming a social entrepreneur. His family business, and I remember this very well, is a well-known brand called Binatone. As I mentioned to you, he's a member of the YPO, and he in 2020 was the winner of the Global Impact Award of YPO. Sunil, what an amazing journey you have had. So let's start with talking about first, what is Project Maji? And then we'll talk about the awards.
Okay, thanks, Ashutosh. Let me start by saying Maji means water in Swahili.
Okay.
And Project Maji is a not-for-profit social enterprise that I started in 2015 with the goal to give sustainable access to clean water to small rural villages. Initially across Africa, but our span is becoming bigger and bigger. I came from the commercial world, as you said, from Binatone. I came across a problem with kids not having access to clean water, and kicked this off actually as a CSR initiative for the family business. But my passion grew, and I took it into a standalone venture.
Wow. And you also won the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Global Water Award. Tell me a little bit about the award and what went into being given this award.
So I think a lot of my journey from moving from Binatone into Project Maji was really about looking at a social problem, lack of access to clean water for villages, but trying to address it in a novel and innovative way. So really what I did is I took a lot of my business skills, and Binatone being an electronics business, I understood, or me and my engineers understood about how to develop a solar-powered pump to deliver water to villages. We understood about the supply chain of production in China, bringing things into Africa. Really the only new thing I had to learn about water as an industry, of course, but what I had to learn about was that last mile of executing from urban Africa into rural Africa. And that was the new skill set before. So we really came at this with an innovative business mindset, thinking out of the box, not in a traditional NGO way. And that's what we applied for the award in Dubai for, to show that there are novel, innovative ways to tackle old, long-standing crises. And I'm very proud that we were recognized for that. It was a monetary award, but as well as a very publicly acclaimed award that gave us a lot of visibility and a lot more backing as a result.
Fascinating. And talk to me also about the Global YPO Impact Award.
So that also was another big feather in our cap. That again wasn't monetary, but really to be recognized by 25,000 peers around the world. We were nominated for that. And then went through a shortlist committee. In fact, we were supposed to be awarded it April 2020 at the big GLCH in San Diego, which got cancelled because of the pandemic. But that again, I've really found YPO to be a fantastic organization in terms of me moving from my old family business world into a new business. The support I got from not only my chapter, my forum members, but from other people in the networks around the globe, supported me in such a big way, and they're the ones who also put me forward for this award. And it was a voted for award across the globe, as you would know. And it's really rewarding to know that I get recognized for this stuff, not only at a personal level, but really from a Project Maji level, to be justified in all the efforts that we're putting in and in the results that we're getting. It really supports our mission.
Amazing. So, Sunil, let's talk a little bit now about Project Maji in Africa. When you started out, what was the need that you wanted to fulfill, and how has the journey been?
So the journey, quite literally, as I alluded to a little bit earlier. It started when I was on a trip in Ghana, when I was running the Binatone business there. I was actually driving from town to town across a dirt road, and my driver all of a sudden stopped in the middle of nowhere, is all I can say. And I asked him, I said, why have we stopped? And he said, I've stopped because there's a puddle of water in front of us. So we're in a 4x4. So I said, well, just drive through the water as we've done before. And he said, well, I can't because there are a couple of kids in the water. And that, of course, made me sit up and understand. I said, well, what do you mean there are kids in the water? Wow. And being a Ghanaian guy, this was normal to him. So he just very nonchalantly said to me, yeah, they're collecting their water, and once they collect it, they'll move on, and I'll drive on. But this was something very, I'm born and brought up in the UK, and I've lived in developed nations all my life. So I was aware of the water crisis. I was aware that villages didn't have water, but it's things that I'd seen on TV, it's articles I'd read. Honestly, I'd never seen this face to face. But I got down and I actually talked to these kids, and they're collecting from this dirty puddle in the road, which, God forbid, you or I, that would be a terrible moment that we have to resort to that. But these kids were having fun, and they were playing in the water, and they were drinking this water, and I was really shocked. But I said, what are you doing here? And the reason they were overjoyed was because their village was just about 100 meters up a hill, and they were on their way for their usual, 30, 40, 50-minute walk to collect water. And they said, luckily, it rained last night. Wow. And this water is just 100 meters away. And I was just shocked by that story and that reality. So actually, I walked up to the village with them to understand more, and spoke to some of the elders there, and discovered that, in fact, the village had been given a hand pump by an NGO a couple of years earlier, but as I've learned, is now quite the norm. It had broken down within a year, and these people had to revert to going back. So really, I just thought, as a CSR initiative for the family business, let's help this community. Instead of fixing that hand pump, which is inevitably going to break again, why don't we come up with a more dignified solution, an automated solution, instead of this manual effort? So we had a solar division in Binatone. I challenged a couple of my solar engineers, look, why don't we develop a kiosk for them? And very critically, not only were we going to give them the water, but we were going to make sure that we stayed in touch with that. We put mobile monitoring onto that to make sure we could monitor it and then maintain it if something went wrong. And that, to me, that was the trick of what I wanted to do, was make it sustainable access to water, not a one-time gift and then who knows what happened. And then the passion frankly just overtook me at a point where I just decided, let me spin out Project Maji and let me run it full time.
Wow. And from Ghana, you obviously must have gone all over Africa, and you just mentioned a few minutes ago that you're now addressing problems of the world. Tell me about how was your journey, some of your learnings as you went within Ghana and then beyond.
Okay, so first of all, on day one, when we decided to do this, before we even had a single kiosk out there, I got a small team together and said, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to address 1 million people by 2025. This was 2015. Quite honestly, I didn't have a clue how we were going to do that, but I thought if we didn't put a big mission out there, we weren't really going to make much of a difference. And by having that clear vision, that's really helped to drive us in a clear direction of getting to scale. So we started in Ghana, as you rightly said, and that's a big help for that was having a big Binatone office there and back office support. We ventured out into Kenya, and that was done with the help of a YPO who said he wants to help us on the ground.
Which is on the other side of Africa.
Which is on the other side of Africa. Exactly. So a lot of people ask me, from Ghana, Kenya is not the natural next next step. Normally you go to maybe Nigeria or Ivory Coast or Cameroon or somewhere, which is actually how our Binatone business has grown. Correct. But for me, very critically, is having the right partner on the ground. And if I can give a shout out, his name is Bharat Doshi, a YPO who said, okay, so he said, I want to help. I like the way you're doing this. We're doing water. Why don't we do something together? And for me, having the right person on the ground was more important than geographical referencing. And on the same front, we're going to be starting Uganda in 2022. First quarter, we should be installing our first sites there, again, driven by a partner that we have. We are talking to people also in the Philippines, in India, where they like our technology and think they can take it forward. And what we're trying to do is not do everything ourselves, because 800 million people in the world don't have access to clean water. What I consider my ambitious goal by 2025 to reach 1 million people is not even 1%. It's barely even 0.1%. So unless we do this with partners, we're not getting anywhere. So that's on the development side.
So you just mentioned 800 million people out of a population of 7 billion. That is almost 9% of the world doesn't have access to clean drinking water.
And the number gets actually worse, because that's who don't have access to it. There's another 2 billion people, or another 1.2 billion, so making it 2 billion people who don't have regular access to clean water. So the problem is actually much more vast, even than the 800 million people.
So Sunil, tell me, given that you spent the last 6-7 years in this social enterprise, what is the reason for such serious water challenges, and what can the world do about it?
It really frustrates me. It really makes me angry, because I can say the water access problem in the world is completely solvable. Okay, it's a political issue and it's a monetary issue, and it's not even that big a monetary issue. We're talking about solving these SDGs by 2030 with $3 trillion per year needing to be spent. The water access problem can be solved with a fraction of that. Okay, but if there is purpose-driven resource behind that, and the political will, and I have to use the bad word here, but we've got to stamp out corruption on these things. Our solution: we can go into a village with our solar-powered kiosk and give sustainable access to water for a complete turnkey cost of about $15,000 for a village of about 1,000 people. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually $15 per person. Okay, it's and we've entered tenders in various countries before, and we've lost those tenders, okay, to solutions that cost $50,000 or upwards. Okay, and I know that those are inferior solutions technologically, sustainably. But this is unfortunately how a lot of the developing world works, a lot of how the global south works. Where it frustrates, look, okay, I'm not naive to the world. I know how capitalism works. I know that backhanders are given to make contracts happen. But it frustrates me so much more when there are such necessary humanitarian needs that need to be solved. Please put your selfish needs to one side and at least deal with those. If there's a telecoms contract and someone's going to make a backhander, I'm realistic enough to know that that happens and someone's going to get rich off that. But why do these necessary problems, these necessary issues, education, water, healthcare, why are these things being plagued by rampant corruption? And also, I have to say, bureaucracy in so many other NGOs or charitable organizations that I have to say mean to do well, but some of them are so huge and they get trapped in bureaucracy, and that's really where we're trying to break the mold. We're trying to be entrepreneurial. We're trying to think like a business, but that's why I said at the beginning we're a not-for-profit social enterprise, where we're trying to put all our business innovation nous, all our business management nous into solving some of the world's biggest problems.
Incredible. I mean, I'm so amazed at what you're just telling me, that the water problem of the world is solvable, and it's probably man-made to a large extent. But again, tell me, one of the challenges that seems to be, I know very little, but from whatever little I have read before I was preparing for my conversation with you, is that we have pulled out so much water from Earth that the water table has dropped very significantly, and therefore to suck out more water is getting almost impossible. In fact, in a country like India, putting a new tube well is almost banned in the developed in the large cities. Love to get your perspective.
Yeah, so there's a couple of angles. You're absolutely right. We not only water, but we know this very well. We are depleting the Earth's resources at an unprecedented rate and at an unreplenishable rate as well, which is a serious problem.
Yeah.
So, but if we talk specifically about water, groundwater is becoming a serious problem. But the problem is not drinking water. The problem is actually agriculture. Agriculture and industry accounts for about 70+% of the groundwater that is lifted up. The drinking water access to it is minimal. So there's actually more than enough groundwater to go around for our sustainable drinking water needs. But it's other industries that are taking it up and additionally polluting it. In big cities, you have a lot of factories and all putting sewage into the ground and chemicals into the ground, and that is polluting our whole underwater table. There are a lot of other technologies out there. Desalination. Obviously, I'm living in Dubai. Desalination is obviously a big one, but you've got to be reasonably coastal to make that. Well, the desalination process itself is very expensive and very power hungry, but then you've got to think about transportation issues. So when we talk about rural areas, and we've specifically focused on small rural areas because those are the ones that are going to be the last to be served by any government or any for-profit enterprise. And that's why we actually have to be a not-for-profit. But that forces us to have a decentralized solution, and we can't take piped water from villages. So people are coming up with other solutions. There's atmospheric collection of water, for example. But for now, groundwater is the best solution we have, and we meaning human drinking consumption is not a big absorber of that. Actually, we have to solve the other problems to make it sustainable.
Well said. And follow-up question for you would be that how important is water harvesting in all the areas that you're working in? Because I again have been told that if we start to harvest water well, the groundwater in a very localized manner, the table shoots up, which can then assist your own project a lot.
So in a lot of places that we work, rainwater harvesting is a big thing. But let me just give you some stories about Ghana and Kenya, about two very different environments. Ghana actually has a lot of surface water. A lot of the areas we work in, actually, if I can tell you, we have some kiosks in villages that are not even maybe 20 meters away from an open water source, but it's a polluted open water source. Correct. So a big part of what we have to do when we go into villages is education. We have to tell people, why is it important to drink Project Maji water and not go to that river or that lake or that pond or drink from a rainwater puddle? Because for these guys, often it's, but my father drank from there, my grandfather drank from there, my great-grandfather drank from there. What's the problem with it? So there's a big part of education that has to go around that in a place like Ghana, where there is actually abundant water around, but it's not clean for drinking. Kenya, being very arid, actually, a lot of the places we work, that's where you hear some of the real horror stories about people having to walk 20 kilometers or more to get water. And rainwater harvesting has been their lifeblood, because they don't have those open water sources. If they don't have rainwater accessible to them, they have a serious problem. Now, rainwater, a partial problem is it's not necessarily clean, because it's collected from roofs of houses, and you get bird mess and everything coming into that. But that's a secondary issue. The other very big serious challenge for all of groundwater is climate change. Rains are becoming very, very unpredictable today. So at times where they may have a standing tank at a person's house to collect rainwater, at a time it may not rain. It may not rain that whole season, or it may not rain for a couple of weeks. So they need to have alternative solutions available.
And like I see in India, a lot of the larger cities in India have virtually moved to getting their water through tankers, because they don't have access to drinking water anywhere else. Is that your experience in Africa and some of the other parts of the world?
It is absolutely, and that's again where we can offer a much more affordable and sustainable access point right in the heart of the region, because the tankers, of course, they're not practical, they're very expensive to bring in, and they don't also come on time. That you can run out of water and they may not come for two or 3 days. We find that. So we really want the villages to be reliant on a local water source that is going to be there for them as and when they need it.
So I've got time for 2 more questions. You just spoke about desalinating ocean water or seawater. Is that something that's commercially viable in the developing part of the world, or is it only rich nations, or only a rich nation can do it?
I think it is from a commercial perspective, only rich nations can do it, and even there it needs huge subsidies because it's very, very power hungry, and not to mention there are environmental concerns if you don't deal with the brine properly.
And my last question to you, this is more a generic question. It has often been said that the next world war will be fought because of water. And we keep seeing this happening in different parts of the world. Countries are very busy fighting about their rivers, and we see that within states in our country, one state fighting with another because water hasn't been released. What is your perspective on what should really be done to manage such a serious challenge to such an essential resource?
So I think that's absolutely right. Water is going to be the cause of many conflicts, whether it's another world war or not, I don't know. But definitely, and already it is a cause of many regional conflicts, of course, on borders. But I think in terms of how do we solve this, it's actually a much bigger problem than just water, because I think as we saw a couple of months ago with COP26. I think the world really has to start taking, and I mean governments of the world, have to really start taking the environment seriously, because, as I said, one is water's running out, but water's also running out because climate is drastically affecting rainfall and its replenishment for things. But there is no combined mindset. Everyone is thinking so selfishly, so within their boundaries. But we live in a connected world, and you can't hide from the environment. You can't hide from water shortages. An effect on this in one part of the world is going to affect other parts of the world. So I know it's your last question, and I hate to end it on a disheartening note, but I'm not optimistic about the way that the people who are supposed to be responsible for this, the governments around the world, are not thinking in a proactive, collaborative way that they really need to be.
Fantastic. So I've got to then ask you one more question so that we end on a positive note, which is that give me an example of how Project Maji has made a huge difference in the lives of so many villages.
So if I can answer in 2 parts. One, I'm going to talk hardcore numbers. Okay, there is clear research done by a couple of universities, Oxford University being part of it, that for every dollar invested in water access in a community, there is a 7x return on the, let me call it the GDP of that community. You go in, you put access to water. That means girls who are previously walking hours to collect water can now go to school. It means women who used to walk for hours can now, well, either find employment or just be there to be full-time mums. The men who are farmers who are getting sick from dirty water now can go back to their farming and they're not losing income. So there is a direct economic impact that goes back to a village every time you give access to water. If I can talk more on a human level on stories I hear, and I get a lot of anecdotes when I go in, and I love to talk to the people, and I always talk about the drive this gives me is seeing the smiles on people's faces. But one time very early on in my journey, I remember talking to some school kids, exactly the example I gave, where we came in to give water. Previously, they were walking for hours to get water, and now they can go to school. So I asked them, I said, what are you doing with this extra time that you have saved? And I was really expecting that, okay, we're going to go to school, we'll do our homework, we can do our chores. And the answer they gave me was, we have time to play.
Wow.
And I thought that is, we come at this from this grandiose perspective, let's go save the world and do this kind of stuff so that they can go to school and they can do their homework, but they can be kids again. They can just live normal lives with something as simple as giving them access to clean water every day. And that's what enriches my life and makes me drive forward and do this project.
Incredible. Wow. Sunil, on that note, thank you so much. Thank you for talking to me about Project Maji, about the incredible work you are doing to get something as basic as water, something that we all take for granted, to a large community which does not have access to water. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, about talking about this. And what you just ended with was thank you for giving an opportunity for the kids to go out and play again, which is something again we took for granted. Congratulations on all the awards that you have won. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Rashid. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.